Welcome to Issued for Construction. Today I've got with me a woman who I met 7 months ago, maybe now. She held a great party for the launch of Impossible Toronto. For those of you that are unaware, I will do the introduction now. Today I've got with me Zoë Coombes, unlicensed architect, but she is also the executive and creative director of the Neptis Foundation in Toronto, a foundation that is geared at looking at all of the things that are impossible to do and accomplish here in the city. And she works with a number of architecture practices on bringing ideas forward that could potentially change Toronto for the better. That is my short summary of who you are, Zoë.
I love it.
It doesn't entirely capture everything. The rest will be captured over the next hour plus. So, first off, thanks for doing this with me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
As if you've listened to this podcast in the past, I typically try to have people over. We have lunch. We say the things that we can't say while we record. And then we get into my office and we go and we engage in a conversation or dialogue about them and their life and what they do and how they do it and the path forward and what they want to accomplish as they continue along their professional goals. Speaking of engaging in meaningful dialogue and understanding professional goals, I want to take a quick moment to talk about my partner Kaplan's Appliances, because Kaplan's isn't just an appliance supplier. They are a true community builder. If you're simply looking to grab a basic box, plug it in, and make that the extent of the experience, there are plenty of places for that. But if you really want to build something special and form a foundational relationship with a practice that truly understands the importance of what they provide to the industry, well beyond just a transaction, working with Kaplan's is something you need to do. Whether you're an architect, a designer, a builder, or a homeowner, Kaplan's is deeply interested in curating relationships. In fact, as part of my partnership with them, we curate dinners of thought, bringing people together to engage in dialogue about what's happening in the economy, shifts in design, and the latest trends we're seeing. Rob Kaplan and I frequently have lengthy conversations about what's going on in the market because they genuinely want to understand and support what is happening in our industry. It all comes down to honoring the foundation of a relationship and how it's supposed to be served. Because when you have a relationship, you have trust. And when you have trust, you have a deliverable experience that is great for both sides. If you want to learn more about Kaplan's Appliances and what they do for the industry outside of just supplying fantastic brands, you can email me directly. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at issuedforconstruction.ca, or head over to the liner notes to connect with them directly. Okay, let's get back to Zoë. So, all of that said, that's a lot. Zoë.
That is a lot, but I like that I'm memorable to you as having hosted a party.
I mean, that I intended on only dropping into the party. I didn't know that I was going to be.
I'm glad you stayed.
Closing it out with you. It was not my intention that night. And you've also got a lovely partner, David, who I've connected with, and we send each other text messages about motorcycles and other such things. Nice. So I guess I should say I've really enjoyed the relationship that you and I have fostered over the last 7 months or so.
Ditto. I love what you're doing with Toronto architecture and bringing everything together. I mean, in an online, but in a space. And it's been enormously useful for me to understand, to get a better sense of really who the people are behind these firms and get a good sense of the landscape. It's just it's been a complete treasure to me.
I don't take compliments well, so thank you.
Okay, well, hope we don't have to fight this out later, but gratitude.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I do. So let's get into some gratitude for what you've done in your life and who you are. So let's start it off with where did you grow up? Where were you born? What city?
Bathurst and Bloor, Toronto, Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Toronto.
And what was your life like early on in life? What kind of child were you? Were you as
I was an only child. I am an only child.
Yeah.
My father was an architect and came to Toronto in the early 70s and became the planner of Central Toronto, chief planner of this is sort of before amalgamation of Toronto, so chief planner, but that was really of the center of Toronto. And in the early 80s had sort of moved on and had gone to New York City to work on Battery Park City with the Reichmans in Olympia, New York. And I stayed in Toronto, and had just a really nice kind of stable Toronto childhood for that. My mother, yeah, and I don't know, long story, but my father went on to work in London and then came back to Toronto, and they had each married different people and came back to sort of professionally set up the Neptis Foundation. So I sort of had this, this background in architecture and planning, but from a father who was a little bit remote, as I was in Toronto and he was sort of moving around the world through these different sort of phases of his career between architecture, planning, development.
Right.
And I was in Toronto at Huron, Winona, and Oakwood. And then went and did a degree at King's College and eventually went to Columbia University and spent 15 years in New York, in architecture and design. But yeah, I was in Toronto with a fairly typical Toronto childhood, which I'm quite grateful for.
And so define what that would look like. Were you the kid that was like on a bike driving to friends' houses and going to playgrounds and stuff like that? Or were you, what were your interests when you were young? Or were you doing extracurricular activities? Like who was young Zoe?
I mean, it was an extremely kind of progressive environment, let's say. We lived, 10 doors down from Jane Jacobs. Went to school that was, enormously multicultural, but at some level didn't feel that way. I mean, I think kids just sort of feel like, oh, hi, you're from Guyana or Serbia or whatever. You're just a kid in my class.
Yes.
We've got to kind of, I think as a lot of Torontonians grow up, you sort of maybe go to other places in the world and realize how amazing that is, but it felt quite sort of natural and pedestrian. I think I was always, there's that thing about people are either interested in things, people, or ideas. I think I've always been an ideas kind of person, I think. And because I had a single mom and I was a daughter and I had sort of girl cousins and a grandmother who was quite a strong force, I didn't have a very kind of materially oriented set of interests till later. But I think when I was young, I always liked ideas. And obviously architecture is fundamentally like at some level should be somebody who's interested in things and material things.
Starts with ideas.
Right. But at the end of the day, you're producing, like, you should care about, carpentry and Lego and the materiality of stuff. And I think for some people, the ideas come after. I think for me, it's like the ideas came first. And, later I felt this is like, there's too much of an idea. I need to ground this in things. And architecture became kind of an expression that way. But I didn't do a lot of sports. But I think I was just sort of like, I've always been somebody who likes sort of the newspaper and ideas. And I mean, I like people, but it's like, it's interesting to play with ideas with people.
Right.
I think that sort of was my character when I was younger. I think there was a transition a little later to sort of a more material thinking, but.
So were you the student in school that was coming up with the idea for what the project would be?
Yeah, like I had a best friend, Alexandra, who was like very careful with the notes, made beautiful notes. And I think would sometimes like miss the plot on what the class was about because the notes were so perfect. I was a kid who had like no time for notes, but I understood what was going on. And we were a force to be reckoned with at exam time because she had the beautiful notes and I had the general idea of the thing. I don't know. That's you know what? That's how an ideas person would explain their childhood. This is completely abstract and like ridiculous. I don't know.
I don't see it as ridiculous.
I was a kind of normal kid. I don't know. I went to house parties. I my school was very strong in music. I went to Oakwood. Oakwood was like music and basketball. And yeah.
You could almost make a movie.
Like a basketball musical?
I was just thinking of Love and
like
Basketball.
Fame, but with sports.
I thought love and Basketball. Then I was like, music and basketball. Yeah, you could do that. What could that be? Dabble in that.
Yeah, I mean,
I have this.
It's hard to describe oneself, particularly 18 years of oneself.
Really?
To go on.
No, I think you've done a good job so far. I can understand what you were describing.
Yeah.
I could see that you and Alexander are sitting and studying for the class, studying for the exam.
Yeah. And
you're like, yeah, pass me those notes. Okay, no, you've captured enough. I have ideas in my head of like what I'm going to be able to write. Don't worry, I've got this.
I guess.
So how did you take what you knew of yourself and know where you wanted to apply when you were looking for university?
Well, I thought I would go to McGill because I was cool, or I felt myself to be cool. But apparently the admissions board didn't feel the same.
It didn't align.
It didn't align. So I ended up at the University of King's College in Dal campus doing foundation year program, which was probably like just the best place for me. It's a smaller program and it's like a speed run through Western Civ. Like it's a great books program. And at my high school, which was tons of fun, lots of music, was not the most intellectual place. And I arrived there and I was like, wow, like a campus full of nerds. This place is great. And like people, it was not a very hard school to get into, but there were some like just ridiculously intelligent people in my year and in that environment. And I think, and I did the foundation year program and I was like, I'm signed up for the whole thing. I'm going to do a whole degree in this. A lot of people move on and do something more specific. And I think I got to the third year and I was like, this is actually too much. Like, this is too much brain. And I had a boyfriend there who was in the architecture department. And I think that was sort of my key to seeing like, oh, this degree is a different way of thinking. Mm. And I was like, I need this. This is like ideas, but grounded in something real. That was sort of so I got to third year and I was kind of like, I kind of want to be in your program, but I know I need to finish this one up.
So is that what you did? You finished the fourth year of that program and then transferred?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time sort of like helping out on his projects. He was at Dal, which was tons then, which I guess is Dal Tech now.
Yeah.
And he did one of the like summer build studios. They really get students sort of making stuff.
Yeah.
And I sort of just always volunteered to help out and was just interested in the classes in his program. And so he had this thesis program. It's still like the best thing I've done in architecture. It's called the haptic interface. And he was looking at, this is 98, I guess, 99, 98. And he was looking at computers and he was like, oh, wow, like we can design things digitally, but how do we add the hand, like the feeling of the hand to this stuff? So he had this thesis called the haptic interface. And I think he's like reading all these books by Greg Lynn and he's like, oh, this is so cool. So he spent the summer, he spent like the student union fee getting a license in Premiere, shaped this form, which was like this band shell thing, with his hand in plasticine, like made a nice shape, but then took this early copy of Premiere and sliced it into sections. And then we spent the summer building this form into like a tensile plastic form. My friend Amanda Burt was dating the drummer for Thrush Hermit, which was my favorite band at the time. So we got Thrush Hermit to agree to play a concert on Spring Garden Road. Spent the whole summer making this tensile digi band shell thing. Got a license to like shut down the street. Put on this concert. And I was like, this is you could have an idea about like the hand and form, and you can just make it out of plastic and invite your friends and be like the coolest thing ever. And I was like, okay, this is like what I want to do. I had the concert. It was awesome. And then like the review team for his thesis, like Ben was like, oh, I'm totally going to win like the Royal Prize or whatever it was. The review team at Dow was like, we had a long conversation. We've decided to pass you, but like computers are probably not going to be the thing. So just don't get too caught up in it. And they like gave him his degree, but definitely not like the Royal whatever prize. And he was so deflated.
Gutted, yeah.
He was so gutted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, no, dude, I'm telling you, there's something to this. This is so awesome. And from then on, I was like, I need to get myself to Columbia University because that's where all this paperless architecture and like Greg Lynn and whatever, all these guys, this like that's where I need to be.
Before we get into that transition to Columbia, I want to take a quick second to talk about our friends over at The Doors, a European window and door company. Because whether you are looking for premium windows or doors in high-end aluminum, classic wood, or sleek steel, these are the people you need to know. But their true specialty lies in high-quality tilt and turn windows straight from Europe. We're talking high R values, amazing thermal breaks, and double or triple pane options available in both custom and standard colors. Here is what really sets them apart from the rest. They are a true one-stop shop. They control the entire process from the very beginning to the very end. They handle the initial measurements, the takeoffs, and the shop drawings. And from there, they manage the ordering, the installation, and even post-installation service, all completely in-house. No third parties. That level of dedicated service rarely exists in our world anymore. In fact, they just recently acquired their own spider crane, so they can fully control their installations without having to worry about equipment rentals. They have built an incredible reputation working in Toronto and now across North America for the last 20 years. If you want to learn more about them, and I highly suggest you do, head over to their website. There's a link right in the liner notes of this episode. And if you'd like, you can also email me directly and I will personally connect you with their fantastic team. That includes the owners Martin and Marta, as well as Radek in business development, who recently joined them and brings an incredibly high motor, high energy passion to what he does. Again, check the liner notes or shoot me an email to get connected. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at issuedforconstruction.ca. Now, let's get back to Zoe.
And I took like years getting myself into it. And he went to go work for Vignoli and Richard Gluckman, like doing like very beautiful stuff. But I sort of, I think, took the digital formalism thing further than he did. But that was sort of my tradition. That was my transition from sort of ideas world to like, wow, we can translate this into plastic.
Yeah, tactile. Yeah.
Tactile.
Right? So did you go directly from Dow or Tons to Columbia? Or
yeah, I didn't go to Dow. I mean, I took a couple of history classes there, or like which I was like a sideline girlfriend, like more interested in the boyfriend's degree than my own, but necessarily having to finish what I had started,
Right.
you know. Yeah, and I mean, I spent a few years like I had to do, you know, I had to take calculus 1 and 2 3 times so that I could get a great grade. Like I had to do physics. I had to build up I was coming from philosophy and history, so
you were committed.
It took me a while, but yeah, that's where I that's where I ended up.
I mean, I will often say to anyone that listens to this that if there's something that you can learn quickly in this is that typically when you set your mind on something and you have that goal, you need to then go ahead and achieve it by also closing out what's behind you or what you're currently dealing with.
Yeah.
And the concept of having to retake courses to be able to complete what you needed to as the prerequisites to get into the program also defines a lot of who you are without you intending to define who you are. So
I guess I just saw something I really wanted.
I get it. But there's a lot of people that will see something that they want, and when they're met with some level of challenges to get there, they will redefine what they want.
Yeah.
Right? And lower the bar to be able to achieve what they want. Whereas if you know what you want and to get there, you need calculus and you've got to retake it a couple times. We talked before we started recording. I finished grade 10 math, and that was it for me. I was done. Like I was not.
That's also a good choice.
Just saying, there are people out there that like, yeah, that's not for me, and I'm done. And then there's other people out there that like, this is for me, and I'm going to do what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
So credit to you, because I didn't have that. Really. Anyhow, I'm just relating this back to me because I'm selfish.
I like it. It's actually, yeah. It's a bit much to sit here in a chair like talking with Sigmund Freud over here.
Yeah, Sigmund Freud. Yeah, okay. I mean, today's hair is that. And anyhow, so you get into Columbia, and I mean, there's got to be a whole level of validation to be able to know that like you did what you needed to get into a school that you were excited about going to. Did you ever take a moment to celebrate that?
No, I don't know. Okay. Sounds awkward. I mean, I did do another one of these like one-shot applications. I was like, that's the school I need to be at. Applied there, got in, which in retrospect is a stupid approach, which I should have learned from, when McGill didn't agree. And I had luckily because the application was like $30 and I happened to check like the University of King's College. And I was like, I guess I'm going to the other one. I guess that was like a bad strategy. I also actually, on this path, I don't know. I'd like to have a more kind of clear story. I don't want to, it's almost getting too confusing, but I also did a year, my father had sort of been in architecture and planning, and I'd always sort of had this, a bit of a kind of, maybe just that way of looking at architecture because of seeing it through his lens. But a program at Columbia, which is basically an urban history year, which I did while I was sort of piecing together this like physics and calculus and whatever.
Okay.
Which you do 6 months of history on New York City, 6 months on Paris, which are two very different cities, lots of overlaps, lots of differences. And a lot of people take that and sort of go into planning or architecture. And that year, actually, I have to say, maybe on paper seems like almost a bit of a dilettantish thing to have done, but is more useful to what I'm doing at Neptis than, I'll say very useful, because it's like an intense study of two cities. And, I think Toronto is going through a lot of the same challenges. So I think back to that year, and it's like one of those things that I wouldn't have ever, it's not like I planned to be doing what I'm doing now. Enormously useful. And I did there's a planning school at Columbia, and I did look for 5 minutes at saying, maybe you should be a planner. And I just thought, oh no, like the culture of that is not a fit for what I'm looking for. And I looked up to the 5th floor, the architecture school, and I was like, that's where I'm going. But so I did sort of take a bit of a detour into that. I don't know. I mean, I guess I was in an environment where I wasn't really focused on the status of the place, or I wasn't focused on like, is it hard to get into? I just wanted to be there. I was like, let's just make sure that, but like, once you sort of get in, it's like, let's go. I want to go with the ideas. I'm here for the bumper sticker or something. Right. And it was an exciting, I don't know, it was an exciting place to be.
And you were there at what time, what year?
2000 in the MArch, 2001 to 2005. Okay. I think. I don't know if the math makes sense on that. Forget. You were just No, 2001 was the 9/11.
I was just going to say year. Just after
2002 to 2005, I guess. Yeah. And it's kind of the end of the kind of that really digital era. Had a year of Schumi as the dean, and then Mark Wigley came in, and things sort of shifted to something that was a bit more, that was like less, I think there was a sense of the kind of formalism sort of being exhausted, and trying to sort of bring in, I don't know, whatever Wigley was bringing, social issues or something.
How many?
Still very formalist.
How many students were in the program at the time?
I don't know, 60 or something.
Okay, so it's a small program.
I guess.
Yeah.
Seemed big. Still didn't get to know everybody.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And did you become close with any other students there that you're still?
Well, my husband. I met my husband.
Well, there you go.
In the first year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, sounds terrible. I keep talking about like my love life and then daddy issues and my marriage all sort of merging into one.
You brought up daddy issues. I didn't say anything.
I always think it's funny people saying like, oh, I could never date somebody in my profession. I'm like, how could you not? Like, how could you? I mean, I understand it in architecture. It's architecture is really takes a lot of time. It's difficult to do as a day job and then have a marriage, let alone have children as a kind of separate entity. A lot of architects just make it work by just pulling children into the office. So, but yeah, I've always found it to be just sort of like one fluid thing, the creativity of architecture culture, of making things and marriage and making a family, and it's all been sort of one thing for me. So yeah, I met David in architecture school, and we did the housing studio together, which a lot of offices have formed out of the Columbia housing studio. I think Shop did, and but yeah, so
did
one
you
good reason to be there.
I was gonna say, I mean, it sounds, I didn't know that's where the two of you met, and so it definitely sounds like it was worth going there for that.
Yeah.
And what about outside of the program directly? When I say directly, meaning like in the school, co-ops, opportunities for being able to engage in professional life outside of what school was what did you have those types of opportunities?
No, that's not what, it's not a co-op program like
Some other
Waterloo
schools.
is.
Yeah.
Like I think the way the kind of Canadian thing is, and maybe it should be. It was very like, it was a pretty wacky place. And I mean, maybe there's a certain kind of thinking that couldn't emerge if it was sort of like in office back at like, it's like, that's a sort of a double-edged sword to have a very close relationship with like the practicalities of practice. But no, Columbia was not about that. I mean, it was really making the most kind of bizarre, blob architecture. It's not practical when you try to. However, my kid sort of wants to go into architecture, although I think he'll take sort of my path, do a like history and philosophy first. But, I'm always saying like, take a look at SciArc, because SciArc is like the one school that's even wackier, right? Like they are just disconnected from everything. But, friends of mine in big corporate offices, Gensler, like they love hiring SciArc kids because it's just forces just engagement with the tools, like the digital, like the software, and just this focus on making. And you can make something completely ridiculous, but like that same skill that allowed you to make, whatever new way of thinking, if you can problem solve to articulate something completely untethered, you can also probably problem solve to figure out a more efficient floor plan. Because it forces you to be kind of like tool first, So, but that was not the environment of that place.
Yeah, it seems. I get that. I get that sense. So
Yeah.
were you able to satisfy? Did you have like a need to have to go work at a practice to go understand what they were like? Did you ever feel that, or not?
I mean, I think like as I was saying, we came at sort of the end of that digital era. Like I think, the real sort of paperless architecture stuff, like I had sort of caught the tail end whiff of that in Atlantic Canada, which they were just like, barring any disruption from entering the province. But, when I was there, that was really sort of the end of that era. I think that stuff had really been sort of floating around in the early 90s in its most kind of novel form. And I think for us, we were just like, what does this mean to make it material? So we were really sort of obsessed with like CNC milling and the kind of fabrication and the articulation, the building of that stuff. And I had worked for some sort of planning people over the summer, etc. But really by the end, we went out, my husband's from Barcelona. We went to Barcelona to try to figure out what they were doing at the IAC. But quite quickly, us and another group of people after we graduated went and got CNC milling machines and set up space in Brooklyn and started making stuff. And it was really like, what do you take with all this kind of formal stuff and how do you express that in material, what is, and make that stuff. So that's what we sort of spent, 10 years doing in Brooklyn, which is the opposite of what I'm doing now. I don't know. I'm just going.
So much fun.
It was so much fun. And as we started up, one of the first things, because we had a fair bit of space at the front, which we could do at night, we started by doing, we just opened an art gallery, let's say, just because we had the space.
Yeah.
We started doing sort of collaborative projects with people who weren't in architecture. So a lot of graphic designers and stuff. So we had this project called the Versus Project. So our studio is called Commonwealth. We had Commonwealth. The first one we did was with a graphic designer in the UK, Michael C. Place. And we were like, give us a piece of graphic design and we'll sort of build this into something physical. And we took these prints and we took all the vector graphics and built it into the frame. Did another one with this guy, Joshua Davis. And we took these things that we had made and we cast them in porcelain and put all his work on it. And we're sort of working with people who were in design, making some kind of physical object, but their file and our file merging in some kind of thing. And we just had big parties. It was the Versus series, and be come see what Commonwealth and Build made, come see what Commonwealth and Joshua Davis did. And we're just in Brooklyn, not knowing, but at a time when there was just so much awesome energy, and anyone just because you were there, anyone was happy to send some files and come by and have a night party. It was a great way to meet people.
Well, it's super fun. What you're describing sounds like what you were doing at the other party when you put on the street festival.
In Halifax. Yeah, that
sounds like a more refined version of.
It's true.
Evolution of what that was.
It's true. I hadn't thought about that. It's I had a friend who was dating a drummer.
Yeah.
They made some awesome CDs, and let me put that together with the cool thing the boyfriend is making.
Right?
And we'll invite some people.
Yeah. Now we've evolved. Now we've got a better idea of what we can do, and then we can collaborate in a different way and bring people together to enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's also why Impossible Toronto. I mean,
I was going to go there next. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, not to drag it there, but why I really wanted to do this. So the first Impossible Toronto is Studio Varro and Gabriel Fain Architects. And I really wanted, the collaboration model. I mean, this is a bit of a corny word, collaboration. But when you put two creative things together.
Yes.
That's
We're gonna go all into that later.
Let's back up. But
yeah.
I hadn't thought about it, but this is a recurring pattern. Before I get to the third iteration.
It's the evolution. The third iteration is the evolution of it all.
Yeah. All started with Ben Chekwich of Chekwich Poiron Architects, which is a great architect on the West Coast, still building buildings. You should interview Ben.
All right. Well, Ben, if you listen to this, we'll probably have spoken by now.
Yeah.
So tell me about what life would have looked like post New York or post completion of your undergrad. What it would have? Well, yeah. What did it look like? Oh, what did it? Yeah. What did it look like? Sorry. Oh, I might have used the wrong word. Yeah. So we went to. All right. So we went. We rented a space, and we rented a space from. Okay. I don't know. Stop me when my anecdotes are just going too weird and don't worry. Far. No, are you kidding? This is the whole purpose of this. We rented. This is what you tell me you love about this thing. Getting to know the people. We rented this space that had, some artists in it. It was like a hovel. The guy who was in the space, there were two of them sort of sharing the space that we took over the lease from. In what part of New York? In Williamsburg. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. North 11th and Wythe. Okay. But it was just it was so desolate at the time. And the guy who had been in the front space, which we then sort of made this haphazard exhibition space or whatever, had built a hamster wheel and had been living as a hamster. Hold on. He built a human-sized hamster wheel. A double volume, like a 13-foot diameter wheel that he ran on naked. Oh, and naked. Would film himself. Yeah, because he identified as the animal world. And so to build empathy, he was living as that animal. Okay. Through the lens of, and there are YouTube videos. This naked guy in a hamster wheel.
And
this will not be available in the liner notes.
This is like his art project. And he had been doing this for a while, living in this way. And anyways, so just Williamsburg felt quite desolate. And it felt very like serious that we were actually going to make things. And we had signed the lease. And I remember calling up like Verizon and being like, hi, we need internet. And they were like, well, we don't service that area.
Is it because of the naked man on the hamster wheel? Our technicians are saying no to that area.
Wisely saying no. Like, if you guys get online, it's going to be a disaster.
They walked up to the window and they were like, all right, this block is unserviceable.
This mind does not need to spread. No, but I remember they were like, yeah, for $25,000, you can we'll dig internet to your thing. And I remember standing outside and being like, I can see the Empire State. I mean, there were plans to put a coal burning factory on the Brooklyn waterfront. Like, this is right after, Bloomberg's sort of this is just Williamsburg hadn't kind of hipsterized yet. Right. It hadn't completely exploded. This is just before. So there were plans, which were getting a lot of protest, to have a new coal-fired power plant a block from us. So it's just seen as like a shitty part of town.
Right.
No internet. And we had just signed a 5-year lease. And I was like, I cannot do digital whatever without internet. Are you crazy? Well,
do you have the option for AOL dial-up?
No, I don't know. I think I just cried on the phone and they brought it for free.
No way.
Yeah, of course. I was like, I swear people are going to be using the internet here. It'll be worth it for your company.
Before getting into the dial-up internet days, I want to take a quick pause to talk about a company that is bringing something truly revolutionary to the landscape and design industry. And here I'm talking about Aquanta Pools. If you are looking to create a naturally shaped oasis that looks almost like a mirage right in your backyard of your property, well, Aquanta is the team you need to know about. They specialize in incredible installations from Biodesign, and the owner, Yuri, is actually one of the only retailers in Canada who can install this system. He has been executing seamless installations right here in Ontario, specifically in Toronto and Collingwood, Simcoe, and surrounding areas. Whether you're an architect designing a residential backyard, a multi-res development, or a high-end hospitality project with an incredible space for a pool, you need to look at what Aquanta can do. Yuri is a true professional who brings 20 years of overseas pool experience to the table. What makes Biodesign products so special is that it's not your typical concrete pool. Although if traditional concrete is what you want, Aquanta can certainly do that too. The Biodesign pool uses an advanced layering system that is malleable to the ground, meaning it naturally allows for the expansion and contraction of the earth. Furthermore, Yuri and his team can outfit your oasis with whatever filtration and sanitation setup you prefer, whether that's standard chlorine, bromine, a saltwater system, or advanced ozone filtration. To learn more about how you can create a seamless natural oasis on your next project, head over to the liner notes to find their contact, or you can email me directly and I'll connect you with Yuri. My email address is Jonathan, Jonathan, @issuedforconstruction.ca. Now, let's get back to Zoe and listening to the sound of dial-up. Nah, just kidding. No sound. Just talking about it.
And they brought it, and a couple of years later, Vice Magazine headquarters is across the street.
I love it.
It's the Wythe Hotel is across. It's just,
yeah, you're welcome, Vice, for Zoe. Okay.
Well, they had $5 billion to fund the $25,000 hookup, but I didn't. Anyways,
how
whatever.
Short-sighted some of these companies. Anyhow, we can get to the short-sighted.
The whole neighborhood exploded, and I think when we started up, and another friends of ours started a similar thing called Associated Fabrication, a couple blocks away, and we all did training together in Dale, Indiana. It's another story. Thermwood, but it was really this kind of plasticky era in kind of architecture and making. There was kind of Asymptote was doing a very kind of slick. There was a lot of Corian, we can bend plastics to kind of express this feel.
Yep.
And before 2008, but sort of amplified by it, that sort of started. So we're doing a lot of sort of like, Corian would send us like, huge amounts of like just free material to sort of do expressive stuff if we would just send them pictures and stuff. It's all this kind of plasticky fluidity. And there were a couple of cocktail bars that were around Williamsburg that were doing this kind of like, taking old pieces of wood and making old bars, this kind of like vintagey, like ye oldie, and then all with sort of handlebar mustaches. And I remember being at this bakery like a block from us, and it was like everyone was so hot. And I remember seeing a dude with like a big beard, and I was like, that is never gonna work with the girls. And it was like the earliest taste of hipsterism. And then I think like 2008 hit, and there was this big break in like the economy and housing meltdown, Lehman Brothers, but like everybody just lost their job. Everyone lost their job in architecture and wood. And there was just like a hard vibe shift away from the plastics and into old materials, wood and kind of a recycled, and like, look where we are now. Dudes are still doing the bearded thing like they're lumberjacks, is, and that was like a big vibe shift. And that's, I really think, I think it's sort of, it was starting right when we started, but like that became sort of global hipsterism that's, everywhere. And is kind of just, I mean, bless Williamsburg, like New York needs to build like more, but it's just sort of like all that world is gone of that kind of hipster artist just sort of like recycling their way into a kind of wooden aesthetic. But yeah, I think we were just there in a really interesting time.
It sounds like it,
but didn't have a sense of it. Like I think you never really realize when you're in the middle of that. But and we really kind of rode that. We were like, yeah, why do we want to make this stuff in plastic? It's gross. It's like futuristic but plasticky. So we really sort of spent our time really loving new tools. What can you do with a robot control and the kind of formalism that you can evoke from that, but how do we lodge that in old materials? And so always working in a lot of wood,
yeah,
but also sort of bronzy metals and sort of like gypsum plaster where we could, and so it's like how do you build that tension with like a new tool, but sort of working against the obvious and putting it into things that feel very old. And, I think just as everybody else, I'm trying to think about, what does AI mean for rendering or the image making of architects now that maximalist images are just on tap. They feel a bit creepy. You're like, oh, great. Yeah, I get it. But there's an uncanny feeling to it. And I think that same lesson, it's like, you don't want to be Luddite. You want to embrace the new thing. But how do you kind of anchor that in something that feels like it's working against the machine? That's where you get stuff that really feels beautiful, timeless, artistic, etc. So we were cutting things, etc. for other businesses and companies, but we were also making a lot of lighting and furniture and running sort of this gallery also on the side, which was surprisingly successful. It's just very easy business, even though we wanted to do something much harder. Sort of, we were just, we were like selling prints online and stuff. And it was like, it was a great way of meeting people.
How many prints would you sell in a month?
Well, you do these shows, and we had some friends in Barcelona called the Maxalots, and they had this, and they were sort of like, I think we learned a lot from them. They had this tiny gallery. They had this apartment where they were on the ground floor in old Barcelona, and they basically backed the facade of their apartment off by a couple of feet and turned this minor, like the tiniest space, into a gallery, and would have these shows with graphic designers and stuff. This is where we sort of knew of all this sort of graphic design as art scene. Mm-hmm. And they would have these from Barcelona, yeah, because David's from Barcelona, yeah. So going to visit his family, and we always go see the Maxalots. That was Lotja and Max Ackerman. They were Dutch, and they were just in Barcelona. and they would have these shows, and their gallery couldn't have been any smaller. And you just call up like a beer company and they would send a lot of beer if you put their logo on the thing. And, Epson would sponsor the things. And you just have this amazing scene and take pictures of that and then put it online. And then you get, like a whole bunch of people in London sort of like almost wanting to buy a piece of the event, and you don't need, it's like you just needed like the tiniest piece of an event. And then people from all over the world would just like,
they need to be a part of it,
want to be have a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, so then we were like, oh, let's just do some of that in New York. We'll just like have a thing, take some pictures. And we do always do like a screen print or like something that was easy to ship. All the stuff that we were doing with Commonwealth was like, heavier and more physical, and always the prints would just go really quickly.
How were you marketing and selling this?
Like, honestly, I mean, we were on, we had a website and like people could go there. And I guess like the thing with collaborations is like, once you, like if you have some kind of a network and somebody else, like Joshua Davis was like huge and like flash, whatever, like you put two crowds together and they just go crazy. Like, I don't know, like there was no marketing. There was no like, we would print postcards and put them in all the cafes in Williamsburg and like, come to this party. I don't know, like, how did people?
It was more
the Maxalots, like the Maxalots had built up these things. I don't know, like, yeah. So I don't know, who knows? I wasn't like looking in the
No, you
SEO optimizations.
But that's what I mean. You say it as a joke, but like there's so many people out there that spend so much and dedicate so much time to try to figure out how do they make themselves marketable. And yet there you are talking about having a level of success with something that like came as a part of like a joint collaboration and interest, and people are taking note of it. And it's not just people that are local, it's also people from other parts of the world that are seeing it. And you're shipping out prints. And
I mean, I think if you do something like very honest, like people do love seeing, like, if you love doing it because you love doing the design, and somebody is like, here, I'll send you some files. Why don't you see if you can make something? And then you've made a second thing, and then you invite people over. Like, it's a very pure idea of design.
Yes, I agree.
And it's not like, what's the provenance of this piece and what's this, like, I also think things are just unfortunately kind of optimized in a way that it's harder to maybe just be like that today. But we also just installed like a board on the side of our wall, which was like 30 feet by 8 feet of Luan outside, because there was this amazing street art scene that was just, organic. Like Swoon had a thing on the door next to us, which was actually a radioactive waste company had their storage. So I don't know. It was a very rough part of Brooklyn at the time. But, people are just sort of like putting stuff up because there was a certain kind of like, I don't know, like abandonment of cities that just doesn't exist anymore. So we put this board up, and we would just have street artists coming up to us saying, can I put my thing on this board? And it was like, yeah. And then do you want to do something for the inside too? Like, it's just a very pure idea of art. Like, and so I don't know. I think it's like people kind of want to buy into that at some level. Like it's, I don't know. You can think a lot about the marketing, but don't lose, I don't know. Just sometimes just
why and
make the thing good.
And the simplicity of just go out and do it. And hopefully, if it's good, then people are going to pay attention. And find it.
Yeah. And
so let's move now past Williamsburg and
coming back to Toronto.
Yeah, coming back to Toronto. What was the catalyst for that?
We did a lot of, this kind of design world and working really in lighting, and the world of lighting really took off while we were there. It was like really fun to be sort of playing with a kind of digital formalism and working that into lighting. But we had our son, Pau. And I think, New York, I think, New York is amazing because it's such a chaotic, libertine kind of a place, and people are just very like, it's just there's a comfortability with instability there. And so it is great. But you have a kid and you get what New York has in spades is not, when you have a kid, like at some point you have to make a decision about where the kid's going to go to school, and the choices between like the prices of the private schools, not only the prices, like the culture of the private school is intense. And the public school options, it's just not like in Toronto. I just sort of feel like you can sort of send your kid, like it's hard for me to know what's the best. I don't know, send your kid somewhere and the kid will probably turn out okay, and the kid has a sidewalk to go out at.
Yeah.
Like it's just there is a stability to Toronto which can be a little bit suppressive to very creative people or people who want to build big businesses or change the world. But like that stability does have some value. And I think when you become a parent, like I guess for us, we're just looking at a world that we had really strong choices about, that just seemed polarized choices, and a culture where people were really, working very hard, and children are all sort of like raised by nannies, and it just didn't, so I wanted to come back to Toronto. I mean, this happens a lot. Somebody from away marries somebody from away and they have to figure out where they go. So came back to Toronto. We're in the process of pulling all our machines up here, and my dad died, or my dad got lung cancer and died quite quickly. And things just sort of really changed. And so my parents had built Neptis, which was much more planning focused. So, the other end of architecture. My father was an architect, but Neptis was really sort of, I think, looking at Toronto from a planning lens. So having sort of dealt with, all these files and kind of formal complexity and the detail and door handles and lights and lighting, etc., it was sort of like, whoa, shift gears and move to the other scale, which is, what does the Toronto region look like? And because it's a charity, it was either, and my dad sort of brought the ideas. My mother had inherited some money, so brought the money, but my dad was sort of the key in the ideas. It's like, you either have to roll that up or continue it. And so it was sort of like, wow, this is not sort of my background. Let's continue it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give it a shot. And somebody who had been there for a long time, who was a geographer, Marcy Birchfield, said, okay, Marcy, you continue it. And I did a fair bit of administrative kind of work to keep it rolling. And that was a big sort of gear shift, I think, for me, obviously, compared to the work that we had done before. But, it's like equally interesting. And for sure, there's a part of me that was like, spent a lot of time doing like very expensive door handles and lighting. And you think like, wow, is this going to be on my tombstone? I made some lamps for people who have lamps, like thinking about how we grow Canadian cities has a broader implication. So it's like something I was quite interested in too, but this is another chapter. I don't know if you want me.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, you're not. No, you're getting to the point where you talk about coming back home, and this is a big part of coming back home.
So it wasn't the plan, but it was like either roll it up and keep doing Commonwealth or give Neptis a shot. And it was like, okay, I'm going to give Neptis a shot. And that's what I did.
And was that a conversation that you had with your dad?
No, because my dad died. Oh, you mean before he died?
Before he died, yeah. Did he know that you were going to want to try to make a go of it?
No, and I mean, the great thing about my dad, I mean, well, maybe it's not great. Maybe it's denialism, but it's like functional denialism. I think, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he was like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't have cancer. Like, I have things to do. Like, meanwhile, he's 75. He was like a fun guy. So he like smoked for many years. Like, it's not inconceivable. But he was like, okay, yeah, I have cancer, but we're not going to talk about the cancer. Like, we need to talk about
the things we got to do.
I need to talk about the things I need to do with Neptis. Like, let's keep going. So it just wasn't really sort of I don't know. There wasn't a lot of sort of focus on that as he was dying. I mean, I guess we all understood it, but
yeah,
it wasn't really the big focus. It was sort of like, I think he was still having kind of meetings. I think remember I got him some kind of like whiteboard so people can come over and he could diagram things, and he had, but I kind of think like that's the way to go. Like we are all moving towards our demise, all of us.
100%.
Doesn't matter how smart, rich, virtuous you are, it's where we're all going.
Although there is that one guy that's trying to steal life from his kid, isn't he? Like there's that guy, isn't he on Netflix or something?
Brian
I don't
something,
even know what
who's
his
like
name is. I
goes
can't
to
pay
sleep
attention.
at 8 p.m. and
Yeah, and he transfuses blood from his like 16-year-old kid, isn't it?
yeah, what do you think, that guy's gonna live forever?
No, he's trying to cheat the system, but he's still gonna die.
He's definitely dying faster. He's so pale, and anyways, no,
Yeah.
I think whatever. I think we would all be blessed if you find some issue that you become obsessed by. And
Yes.
if you really are obsessed by something, you probably won't want to give a lot of time to realities of our mortality.
Well,
so no, I didn't discuss it a lot with him.
But you have gone and taken it on. And so this is, to me, this is the point that I want to get to now. And that is, we talked for the last couple of minutes about...
Yeah, edit that down. Like, take out 20% of the words,
absolutely
please.
not. No, we've talked the last couple of minutes about everything that leads up to the point where you take on Neptis.
Yeah.
Right? And there is a lot of history that goes into this. There's a lot of relationships. There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of honing in on the craft of the things that both work and don't work in your life. And narrowing the focus down to something that really is going to have some level of impact in what hopefully is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not impact for like one or two people in this world. What you're talking about doing, although you don't ever say this explicitly, is looking to change the culture of the way in which a city can run. And from a much larger global standpoint, it is how can you make people think beyond their nose to seeing change happen on a much larger scale. Now, you're about to say something, but I just want to finish saying this one thing, and that is, first time I met you, I think anyone listening can attest to this. You have so much care and interest across so many facets of this world, people and education, and I to be honest, I can't even actually think of all the other words that I want to try to throw into this, but that you can take what you have as big as what it is and now focus it down on towards something that is Neptis. So let's now go and define what the core value of what you're trying to create with Neptis is today.
Yeah. Well,
if we can.
It's not even a core value. It's just like a CRA definition. Is where we could start. I mean,
God bless
it
you.
is a charitable foundation, which means you can take some money and you can put it into an endowment that is not taxed. So, in return for that tax relief, you need to be doing something that is for the public good. You need to be making a public offering, right? So the public offering is not to tell Toronto how to change, but it is allowed to add to the marketplace of ideas so that in a democratic process, Torontonians can decide, or Canadians can decide what they want to be. So, but it's really, so it's the same definition that allows universities to operate. So you can put ideas into the cultural consciousness for Canadians, hopefully, to make the best choice for themselves. But we're not here to, you're not allowed to lobby. We're not here to tell Canadians what to think. When my father was a planner in the early 70s, he said it's actually, you're in the hot seat and you have to make decisions. It's actually difficult to access good information upon which to make decisions. In a democracy, I suppose people are asked to kind of vote on sort of, consequential things. So putting ideas out there for people, that's what we're allowed to do. I mean, I suppose my dad was sort of working in an era of typewriters. I guess nobody really feels at a loss for more information, but that's what we're allowed to do. We're not here to tell Canadians how to change or whatever, what they should be doing, but we're allowed to put research out into the commons. So, and to fund experts. So The experts that I think are noticeably missing from the way that Canadian cities grow really are architects. And it's taken me a long time to sort of come to this conclusion. I think just pass over, there's some more eras of the story, but Neptis in the past really sort of had a kind of planning, land use economics lens on the city, was very concerned about where it shouldn't grow. The other side of the social contract, I think, after we sort of built the green belt, had the growth plan, there was sort of like this broad consensus about maybe we shouldn't just go out infinitely. There are problems that come with that. Yeah. Congestion, the kind of transit problems that you have to, build to get people to come where jobs are agglomerating. The flip side to that was, where are we going to grow and in what way? And we've done it in a really extreme way, right? The towers filling in the downtown, filling up Yonge Street, which is kind of great. I mean, it's actually a really interesting building that we've perfected, but there's a second level of architecture. It's just too narrow, and there are no architects orchestrating what this kind of regulatory world means. And I think they're really I think the city shows it. So, my take was coming into Neptis, the way of researching or the way of offering information to the city was done in a very particular way that felt a little strange to me. So in this phase of Neptis, it's sort of like the people who are really missing are the architects. These are the people that I want to sort of bring as the policy lens, not speaking the language of planners or land economists or pro formas or trying to be anyone, being themselves, bringing the tools of their discipline, because there isn't a kind of vision of how we want Toronto to grow. There's the constant battles about how we don't want to grow and where we shouldn't grow. There isn't a kind of positive vision of what we want this regulatory system to support. So that's where I've sort of come full circle to I need to get back to a discipline that I'm comfortable with, which is architecture. And which is why I've structured Impossible Toronto as sort of the core piece of Neptis work, and why I want to sort of bring, I think architects are missing and are this enormous resource for Toronto.
So let's talk about what is Impossible Toronto.
Impossible Toronto, in a really basic level, is a research program that I've structured where I go to architects and say, find a building. And the first one we really did in a straightforward way, take a building typology that is a normative fabric building that we don't have in Toronto. Let's design it. Let's try to adopt it to Toronto, and then figure out where this building is hitting regulatory friction. So really in zoning primarily, and secondarily in the building code. I think we've had a lot of conversation about zoning. The kind of YIMBY movement has sort of been very sensitive to how much land has sort of been taken out of Toronto by planning and zoning. Mm-hmm. The second level was, I think, as Toronto started to open up, was the question of, there are all kinds of ways in the building code that even if zoning opens up, this stuff is not delivering the kinds of forms that we imagined.
Right.
And I think when you take the kind of zoning issues and then you add building code, there's just a level of complexity that no brain can hold together. And I think you need to have a conversation about typology, because typology, architecture, the description of an imagined building, is a simple frame to sort of just pause it and say, okay, let's look at all the ways the zoning hits friction with this building. Let's look at all the ways the building, the OBC, the NBC is making friction with this building. But there's a kind of clarifying and a simplicity to the argument. We don't have to understand all the ways that the OBC and all its iterations hits every level of planning. That's just too much to think through. But we do have to have an idea of a particular building. So Impossible Toronto, we're modeling buildings that modeling building typologies really that don't exist in Toronto, and then figuring out why, with the idea that if Torontonians want that kind of a building to exist, here's a punch list. Here's the levers of all the reasons that it doesn't happen.
So what I find so interesting about this, and I alluded to it before, as we talk about university being a tours, right? Oh my gosh, the name of the school at
Daniels?
No,
Tons? Deltec?
Tours. Yeah.
Tons.
Tons. I don't know.
Best name. Why did they kill that? Tons.
I don't know.
It's like a weight.
Right?
It's a heavy weight,
yeah,
too.
It's great. So going from there, working on that project, doing a street party, like going to Brooklyn and experiencing the evolution of that street party in a completely different way. And
well, like this whole narrative's gotten a little distorted. Like, it wasn't like we were just doing street party stuff all the time. But I like that this is going to be the memorable thing. It was sort of like this sideline business that we had. We're actually doing
you're just
lighting.
You're just event planners.
Yeah. But it is like a good, again, we met at a party, like let's roll with it.
No, but I'm talking more about the idea of the creative process of being able to bring people together through something that engages them.
Yeah.
Right. And that you take all of those experiences and now you really hone it and foster it and you turn it into something that can change the landscape of a city and completely change the way in which people engage in the conversation about it.
Yeah. And so the first project, the first Impossible Toronto, is on the courtyard, learning from European blocks with Studio Varro and Gabriel Fain Architects. And like those are two young practices who obviously, are it's architecture. It's a creative act. It's very different than the kinds of people who are normally talking, who were around Neptis of the past, right? Like, it's really important to have land use economics and planning reports, etc.
Yeah.
It's just not a creative culture in the sense that architecture is and should be, and sort of most likely is at the level of those small firms. Like that's, I think, historically we get sort of like new creative ideas when you've got that kind of like small firm hungriness. Yeah. So that is what I'm trying to offer as a different way. And I think people respond to it really well, because it's like, it's intimidating for people to have to think through extremely technocratic processes. Extremely technocratic processes just don't have the tools to even sort of describe the implications of the kinds of rules that they're writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there is something inhuman about it, and it does seem sort of like radical and artsy to sort of get young firms and their creativity to. Yeah. But you know what? Isn't it radical that we've been designing a city without that?
Totally. And the other factor in this, to be fair, is that it's not like these young firms just kind of came from nothing.
Yeah, they've been training.
Were trained at like some of the top,
and KPMB.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were learning through the artisans of that craft, before they got to a point where they were ready to take all they've learned and now have their own take on it.
This is why architecture is just the best profession. You get kids who can do physics, really difficult. It's like the most difficult thing, and studio art. Right? To bring those two things together.
Yeah.
Right. So these are architects who've been working at real firms, putting together buildings that take high levels of competence. These are not like finger painting
long-term projects. Like you're talking about like some of the projects they were working on. Like when I interviewed Alaris and Francesco,
they haven't gone to see the project.
No.
Exactly.
Right. So, and Gabriel working at KPMB, they both worked there, but to have had that level of intelligence to work through is something incredible.
These are the kind of people that you need on the job of thinking about what the next level of Toronto will be, right?
Yes. So the interesting thing is, I think this, like I went to school with Gabriel in high school.
I did not know.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, Gabe and I we went to high school together.
Nice.
And same as a whole bunch of other people in the city.
Were you at the like East York and there was like cyber arts or something like that? I hear about
that,
some.
Yeah, that was with when I was interviewing Anne Marie Armstrong. I was asked to try out for the cyber arts program at Don Mills. No, that was different. We went to so Gabriel, Jen Cutlitz, Anya Moriosef. We all went to York Mills Collegiate.
Okay.
And it ended up having an output of like really talented architects in the city.
Nice.
And then me, this like guy that does this thing.
Yeah.
So I say that because to me, it's interesting now in this industry to see people that came from that same environment and what they're doing, and the fact that they have their finger on what I see as like really impactful projects, not just here in Toronto, but from a global standpoint. And then bringing that back to what you're doing, and the idea that you can create an environment that allows people to pursue the impossible ever so slightly past what's possible.
Yeah.
And that the change in what we see, what's for the city, can likely actually come by the discourse created through these conversations, because the people you're bringing together are totally the right type of people.
Yeah, but I mean, back to the kind of competence part, I mean, the way this works, I think there's a whole history of people doing, studios and architecture school where they take some European form and they explore it. And it's like, wow, isn't that amazing in Europe? This project works. So, for example, in this first project, you can see it's called On the Courtyard.
I should actually say this. Let me plug it now.
Yeah.
That if you're interested in wanting to take a look at what On the Courtyard is, head to the liner notes of the show. There will be a link for the Neptis Foundation. That will be there. There will also be a link for On the Courtyard where you can order the PDF version for yourself, or if you want to, you can order the hard copy, right?
Or you can just Too Long Didn't Read is It's Impossible Toronto.ca. You'll see it all load.
Okay, fine.
You can write it out.
It's going to be able to. So when I mean liner notes, like they're going to see it.
Yeah.
When they go into the show, they can read they can read the short on you, right? And then they go. Yeah. All the hyperlinks will be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the point of that project is so, the two firms went and took a form of building that's common in much of Western Europe, which is the courtyard block building. Drop it in Toronto, and then really a central piece. There's a whole kind of vision of what that would look like, modeled, with the measurements of our blocks, rendered with our snow. But importantly, there's a thing in there called the Matrix of Impossibilities, which is a punch list of where it hits the regulatory system. So in two really important ways, there's all kinds of things about the setbacks. So these are apartments that are not too deep, and are allowed to touch on each side. So there's no side yard setback. Those are sort of planning questions. But in the building code, they've each got a staircase in each building. So this is small lot development where each has a staircase. This isn't a big lot assembly thing where you're running a corridor and they're all sharing two staircases. So it's not a double loaded corridor. They're not double loaded corridor apartments. So they've got light in the front and the back. But and there are issues about our elevator dimensions. So there are all kinds of things that you couldn't do, but we've gone in there and sort of touched on all the places in the regulatory framework where you can't do it. So there's touching back to the OBC, and these are live issues. So Conrad Speckert has really pioneered the issue of circulation egress as it relates to fire safety. He's on the volunteer so-called single stair committee of the NBC, and Vancouver has just opened up a path where there's an exterior stair allowed up to 6 stories, and now Vancouver is trying to figure out a different typology. So these are live conversations, but it's not just to sort of say, oh, let's imagine, yay, let's open our minds. It's kind of like, it's not very interesting to just open your mind. Yeah, my house could be shaped like a banana. And then what? It's like, can we key into stuff that Toronto sort of needs. There's a kind of, I always say there's a ghost building out there that everybody, that Neptis is trying to help throw some funding and throw some organization and some editing into to helping architects sort of articulate what that missing building is, but with some specificity that takes sort of the competence of architects who are understand the real world, to really put together a an adult list of why this doesn't happen. It's not just sort of like the childish dreaminess. So I think where this project works is when you bring those two things. So it's the possibility in the rendering, but it's that possibility, and here's the matrix of impossibilities. Right. So take one of those rabbit holes and go down it, and if you want this Toronto,
And when you look at the creation of the first iteration of this, mm-hmm. was the concept of the courtyard something that you brought forward, or was it something that you asked the people that were involved with to come forward with?
No, I've set the framework for the question, but architects within that framework should each do their own research study. So because, I had looked at the history of New York and Paris and London, I've seen the emergence of the apartment, the kind of aspirational apartment, not just the tenement to sort of deal with overflow, but the aspirational apartment in those three places. I was very interested in the mansion block. That's sort of London, how London in the 1860s, 1880s moved from sort of house and hyper divided house to properly embraced apartment. Mm-hmm. And when I went to talk to Studio Varo and Gabriel Fain Architects, Francesco and Alaris had lived in another typology, which was not the mansion block, which was the courtyard block, because they had lived it in Basel. And they said, yep. Look, can we explore this typology? And great. That's something that you have personal experience with. Like, let's roll with that, So I think always the framework has to be the same, but you want architects bringing they brought a lot of personal experience to that. And there is a dynamic about, anyways, that's, so there's a framework that needs to be kind of common, but each architect, I hope, will unlock different things within there.
So is there,
and make it their own.
Is there an expectation for, or is there, I'll go with the expectation. Is there an expectation of how many of these types of books will exist?
Well, they're really hard to do. Yeah. I mean, these guys
about that offline. Yeah.
Well, no, I just mean look, Francesco and Alaris and Gabriel really just really poured their heart into this. There are a lot of collaborators who brought in support work. Stephen Smith did his work. Volunteer. Jonathan English wrote an interesting thing about garbage. We've got it took us a year to sort of put this together. The print, because it's a book, it's like the editing. I mean, I'm a little divided. It's like, it's such a slow process compared to the rest of the internet, but it's quite an undertaking. And the project now, called On the Side Street, we're looking at Toronto's side street. All our growth is still, all its, loosening of the rules, etc. It's all generally directed for the major thoroughfares. But I'm working with Office U and Odami, and, they're really again, just so engaged in these questions and just the nature of subjectivity, thinking about it slightly differently than the four of us who had thought through on the first one, thinking about it slightly differently. So it's you need to pull enough so that these things read as a series and have and build upon each other. The first one really lays out, 8 issues that are impossible. The second one is we didn't really look at the hydro questions. Second one is sort of going into hydro questions, right, where the first one, and the first one sort of maps out a scaffolding, but hopefully these things build on one another. And the first one was a building that I think had a very clear precedent it was taking, but Swiss courtyard blocks, European courtyard blocks, but it didn't have a clear demographic. This one we're really looking at, and it's not the right word, but downsizers. There's a lot of language and planning that assumes that when kids go to university that the homeowner is going to scale into something smaller. The empty nester. But if you look at the options they're just not the kinds of things that people are trading their house for. And if planning is going to think that families are going to be living in houses and assuming that these things are going to vacate at a certain rate, I mean, nobody's asking this group of people what they would trade the house for, what kind of apartment they would move into. And it's, I think, fundamentally not a double-loaded corridor on an arterial. So we're just going to Torontonians and saying, really what works for you. So there's a clearer demographic there, which is just that kind of the older demographic. What would they move into? And I'm desperate to get to the question of families. I mean, this is the thing that should be the 5-alarm fire to Toronto. Like, Toronto's strength has been that it's been accessible in a very kind of somewhat unexciting way, but very stable and functional way to middle-class families. We really kept the city together through the 60s and 70s, where a lot of American cities sort of emptied out and filled themselves with expressways. But that sort of bargain that has been lost. Like, it's not lost to people who inherit a house, but that's not, like, Canada's not supposed to be a feudal system. Like, so really getting to this idea that we're losing families. I mean, for better or for worse, people are not choosing, what we call condo towers, the towers that we've built, that people are not choosing to have a lot of children in them. And like, we need some solution that is reasonably close to where people work, because people are like, working and having children is happening at the same time for women. You can't have babies when you're 60 yet. So
when you're 60?
Yeah. When you retire and move to Meaford or whatever, like, we need to figure this out. And the Toronto House has slipped outside of salaries. So yeah. I'm desperate to get to that one, but each of these books is so much work, so I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm like, there's at least 3 that have to be done, like, for Toronto, but this is something that really can endlessly be done,
Yeah, for sure.
And there are many typologies, like the mansion flat is, my father lived one in London, and Karen Templin, whose husband is at Alice and Morrison, as a principal, has an amazing book on London's mansion flats. I think cities go through this moment where they negotiate with making the house work. New York certainly went through it. London went through it. We're a very Anglo place. And there are just lots of lessons. Typologies tend to be imported. There's a whole South American story, which we sort of get into a little bit in this second book. We're a very Asian city. I mean, there's just a lot of examples. The Canadian strength is just being open to the rest of the world. Yes. And we should be importing some of this wisdom as we import people. So I don't know. Ask the mirror how long you're going to live, how many impossible Torontos there are. But
to me, I guess I asked the question.
At least 3.
I wasn't sure if you had intentionally wanted to go and put out 3, 4, 5 different books, and that was going to be that program, and then there was going to be something else that you wanted to do as well. What does it look like in terms of the engagement from the architecture studios that exist, and if you are doing these, how do you determine who you want to work with? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think interesting ideas probably sort of can come from anywhere. I don't really care where they come from. But, it is true that probably a practice that's got enough experience, but is still small enough and kind of hungry to think a bit differently. I think people, but also sort of like, institutions or corporations or practices or whatever find something that works, and the temptation is to just sort of keep doing that because it feels good. Obviously with young studios, they're just like, they're having to try to find their way. So it's probably something like that. I mean, I think it really helps. It really helped that Elaris and Francesco had lived in that form.
Yes.
And then I also think it helped to have Gabriel, who's very from Toronto and thinks very Toronto. Like, it's very, to kind of merge the awayness and the localness is kind of how it works. So, I think probably somebody thinking about kids, like when you have a child, you just understand cities and spatial relationships very differently. It's useful to probably have somebody who's like method acted the experience at a minimum, if not had a baby, and tried to navigate. Like, the world feels so different when you're tied to a stroller. It's funny, you're effectively handicapped. Just talking about that, like, talk about accessibility, and I'm like, parents with strollers are disabled for a few years. It's not like something that happens to other people.
But navigating that it brings a whole set of new challenges on the personal side of things, the professional side of things, spatially, all of it. Are there other elements of Neptis that we haven't discussed that are prevalent in what you're trying to do?
No, that's it. That's all I got.
Okay.
No. I mean, I think with urbanism, the problem is, it's like a fractal. It just can spiral into a million things. You've got a good idea sort of like as you're starting to narrow things and as you're able to narrow things. So really, like, I think Impossible Toronto is sort of, I've spent a lot of time trying many other projects, which were sort of all great, but really sort of finding the thing that I think I'm uniquely, you have to find the thing that also drives you, gets you up in the morning every day. That's sort of the place that I sort of want to be working at. However,
isn't that coffee for you? Don't you love coffee? Isn't that why you wake up?
Do I wake up for the coffee? Do I wake up for Pilot? Or do I wake up for Impossible Toronto? Oh. Is Pilot a sponsor? Because they should be now.
Sorry,
plug for
I had
great Toronto.
I had to throw quip in there. Yeah? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
But this, this work does take, there's kind of a duality. There's like, I am funding some very straightforward, very technocratic research related to the building code. Conrad Speckert is just like, that man is a jewel. That guy, somebody needs to offer that guy an Order of Canada once we get our, if we, get some better egress options into the building code. But, he's doing very patient, very slow work on elevator code, stair code, and those, I'm giving a bit of funding and space for him to write sort of very dry analysis. The Ford government, the provincial government, has said this year that they want to do a line-by-line review of the OBC. Somebody needs to do sort of a high level from the perspective of, architects trying to build, what we say is sort of the next level of Canadian cities, where they're running into problems, what kinds of things need a bit of review. So funding for that. And that's, the proper format for that is just pretty straightforward, textural, analytical. It's really not a vibes question. It doesn't need the affect of rendering. It's not a, so funding some of that, because in order to ground something that is more cultural, that is sort of speaking to the cultural consciousness and saying, is this what you want, Toronto? You've got to have the thing, and then you've got to have the kind of hard analysis. Once that if you lock into some kind of desire, if you lock into the city saying, actually, that's what we meant, that's what we want. When we were really NIMBY, we don't want this, we don't want that, we were saying that is what we want. You need some kind of guideline that's a little bit more just analytical in its expression. So I'm interested in doing some funding of that. I've got some stuff going on about elevator code,
Okay.
stair code, OBC broadly, and that will just be published in a straightforward report kind of way.
And so if people are interested in wanting to get involved with you and the Neptis Foundation on this, do they reach out to you through the Neptis Foundation?
I mean, sure. I'm always interested. I'm really interested in understanding kind of where architecture is at. It's a really difficult field. And your podcast has been so interesting to me. It's just like being able to see into people's motivations at just a whole other very authentic way. But, I'm interested in, for this issue, like, there isn't going to be one architect who can make the regulatory landscape legible on their own. It's too complicated. It's too much work. But the win is, if everybody sort of wants to do a part of this project, the win is that we can open Toronto to more building typologies that A, Toronto needs, but B, are the kinds of things that are easier for smaller firms to build. So I'm always, I am, I don't know, I'm an open door. You can email me. But I am really interested in sort of like finding out where the culture is at broadly and trying to kind of bring it to this regulatory table and without trying to make people have to act like fake planners or fake economists.
Yeah.
With the tools that they know, right?
So I'll say this, that if you are out there listening to this, mainly because you alluded to this at the beginning, which was that you can't look to influence the policymakers in the way maybe I can. So if you're listening to this and you're in architecture or you're in planning and you're on the policy side of things and you're interested in wanting to engage in conversations about how we can improve our city, you can email me. Okay. My email address is jonathan@issuedforconstruction.ca. And what I have started to do over the last number of months is to curate dinners with small groups of people to engage in conversation about practice, about change, etc. And perhaps there are opportunities within those types of conversations to be able to influence in whatever way possible a better Toronto and a better Canada. So
I feel like we're doing like some kind of, public call, like off the
it is
top of the skyscraper or something.
Literally a public call.
But I'll also say all the architects are just all on Instagram, and we're Neptis Foundation on Instagram. You can DM me there. I'm always interested. I'm on LinkedIn too.
I say this because having grown up in this city, I am probably more sheltered than a lot of people. I have not seen the world like many people have. But I also know that like this city, that Toronto is a melting pot for what exists in the world. And
no, I agree. Keep going.
Oh, and that and I've referenced this on other recordings, but it's very rare for a city to have as much happening in it as what this city does, between different subculture areas that exist. We have Chinatown, we've got Greektown, we've got all of them all over the city. And we have the arts, and we have entertainment, and we have all of the major sports teams that exist in the heart of downtown, which is almost unlike any city anywhere in the world. We have a transit system that is slowly starting to catch up to where it should be. Another 40 years and we'll be there. But
my in-laws live in Barcelona, and my nephew is an architect in Barcelona, and he lives way out in the west end of Barcelona because they've got a similar cost of housing, like middle class kids who sort of done useful things are having a hard time accessing the basic thing, which is being in the city where the jobs and the infrastructure and the opportunity is. And you go to Barcelona and you look at this thing, it's like, it's so beautiful. And it is built up to 8 stories everywhere. And it's actually very much like Toronto. It's got the Carcerola around the edge. So we have the green belt. Toronto's like on this whole other scale of bigness. But like, I look at Barcelona and I'm like, yeah, man, like, where do you build? Like, you're not pulling this down as like literal UNESCO World Heritage, whatever. Like, I look at Toronto and I'm like, wow, this place is not done.
It's untouched.
It's like this, and we've got this amazing ability to integrate people from like very spicy corners of the earth and come together and like have, reasonable sort of harmony together. Yeah. This is, that is so difficult for places. Okay, we need to just like loosen up and build some more volume. But like this place, the sky is not full. Like, sorry, Barcelona, like architecturally, it's quite full. Toronto is just like an opportunity, like waiting to happen.
It's like in every neighborhood.
And it's lacking architects. So,
yeah,
that's what I'm here for, man.
I mean, if we were lacking architects, my show would have been done a long time ago. If there's anything that we have, there's tons and tons.
We're not lacking architects, but I'm sorry, architects are not meaningfully shaping like so much of architecture, especially once you exit part 9 and move into part 3. There's just so much that's determined by what's happening with the parking, the egress, and what kind of grid comes out of that. There's just a huge amount built into that already. Like, and I understand why architects are wanting to stick to part 9 and at some level stick to interiors, because you've got a reasonable level of freedom there. But this is not like, architecture can be so much more than that, but it's not going to be that if we think that architects are just going to make magic out of the crumbs after every regulatory, the sprinkler industry, the guy with the elevator labor issues, the guy, the fire marshal is just like, we're not going to review the way that we do this. We're not going to talk to the engineer. Like, if every regulator has their piece, the planner says, oh, I want 6 materials on the building because this lady in the neighborhood, architects can't make magic out of those crumbs. Architects need to be at the center and the dialogue and be supported by these regulatory things. Like, this is where architecture can be so much more. So I'm like, man, I don't have the budget to rebuild Toronto. I don't have the social license to rebuild Toronto. But I've got—
Why not, Zoe?
I've got some paper, man. Let's play around on paper. Who can get mad about that?
I got pencils.
You know what? We're good. We're good. If anyone wants to come draw in this yard, come on over.
It'd be great. We could do a drawing class.
Yeah.
Look, I have to say to you, from the day that you and I first met, and we've had a lot of chats where it's like, I gotta go.
A lot of jokes.
I gotta go. I gotta go. I got another meeting. I gotta go. And we're on the phone for another like hour. It has been a pleasure getting to know you. And I'm so thankful that you would be willing to want to do this and sit across from me and have this chat about all of this. You are such an important person to this city.
Oh God, that's awkward.
That I didn't know existed prior to 7 months ago. So I will say thank you, Gabriel, for inviting me to that launch, because it allowed me to meet Zoe and allowed me to meet Francesca and Alaris and then, Michael and Arancha and Nico and
Urosh
and Sebastian and like all the other people. It has been such a joy to be able to engage in these conversations and to know that I have at least one listener out there that's enjoying this. She wasn't ready for this. She didn't know that this was going to be happening. So thank you for doing it, because I do think that through what you're doing, you're going to be able to see some of the changes that you've hoped for, and that I think a lot of people in practice have hoped for, just by simply taking the bull by the horns and engaging in the dialogue.
Well, like architecture in Toronto is like it's like architecture on hard mode. I mean, I really do hope that this helps architecture be more useful to Toronto and open up more space for the profession to kind of play in. And like to that end, really, I think I've said this 3 times already in this conversation, but thanks so much for the parasocial relationship that I've had, that I've got to understand people I wouldn't. Thanks so much for all those conversations that I was able to listen into. It gives me a sense of where the zeitgeist is at. You know? Really, thanks a lot.
My pleasure.